Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most famous and maybe most misunderstood passages in the entire Bible, that final battle scene in the book of Revelation. It's a vision that has absolutely captured imaginations for centuries, but what is the text really saying? Pop culture just loves to paint Armageddon as this literal future world war. We're talking tanks, armies, global conflict, the whole 9 yards. But our source material for this explainer suggests that the author of Revelation is actually painting a very, very different picture, one that's way more symbolic.
The vision in Revelation 19 is pretty jarring, right? It presents this warrior Christ who seems worlds away from the gentle image many of us are used to. He's on a white horse, he's ready for war, and the language, it is undeniably violent. For the first audience who were facing some serious persecution, this was a powerful promise that injustice wasn't going to get the last word.
So this is the big question. How do we reconcile these two portraits? On one hand, you've got the gentle shepherd from the Gospels, and on the other, this absolutely fierce warrior geared up for a final war. Are they contradicting each other, or is there something deeper going on in the text?
Well, according to our source, here's the big clue. The passage intentionally focuses our attention, not on the action of the fight itself, but on the character of the fighter. The author spends a ton of time describing this warrior in incredible detail, and that's where we need to look.
Okay, so let's dive into this. To really understand the warrior, we've got to break down all these rich Old Testament symbols that are used to describe him. Every single detail is a deliberate reference, like a piece of a giant puzzle.
First off, his titles, faithful and true. Now, this isn't just some random description. It comes straight from the prophet Isaiah, and it immediately establishes that all his actions, even making war, are completely rooted in perfect justice, not just raw power. Next up, that robe dipped in blood. And get this, his robe is described this way before the fight even begins. This is a direct callback to Isaiah 63, and it's meant to tell us that the outcome is already a done deal. The victory is already won. And this brings us to his weapon, which is where things get really interesting. The central weapon here isn't a piece of steel. It's a sword coming from his mouth. This is another reference to Isaiah, and it symbolizes the awesome power of the Word of God, which alone is enough to bring about final judgment.
So you've got this incredibly powerful, totally righteous warrior described in these epic terms. You'd expect an equally epic battle scene to follow, right? A massive clash for the fate of the world. But when you actually look at the sequence of events in the text, something really strange happens. Or, to be more accurate, doesn't happen. The armies of the world gather, they get all ready for war, the rider on the white horse shows up, and that's it. It's over. I'm serious. There's no struggle. There's no back and forth, no fighting, no conflict described at all. The enemy forces are just defeated. Effortlessly and instantly. Not by an army, but by the word from the warrior's mouth. In fact, those armies of heaven that follow him? They're basically just observers. They don't lift a finger. They don't have to. The warrior is completely sufficient all on his own. So here's the crucial point. What we're watching is a symbolic judgment scene, not a military campaign. All that war language is being used to show us how final, total, and effortless God's justice is, not to give us a blueprint for some future war. But you might be thinking, hang on, doesn't Revelation talk about a few different final battles? What about Armageddon in chapter 16 or that Gog and Magog battle in chapter 20? That's a great question.
Well, our source suggests that these aren't a sequence of different wars at all. It's much more like they're different symbolic camera angles on the exact same event, one single final judgment. Each scene just tells the story from a slightly different perspective, using different imagery.
And if you look closely, you see the exact same pattern every time. Some evil force gathers the nations for war. They prepare to fight God, and in every single case, they're defeated instantly, without a real battle. It's the same core story, told over and over, a swift, unopposed victory of justice over evil. So where does this all lead? How does this all build to our final understanding of this incredibly powerful vision? What's the ultimate message here? So why does all this matter? Well, because the ultimate point of this whole passage isn't to give us a literal play-by-play of the end of the world just to satisfy our curiosity. It's not a secret script for the future.
No, instead, it's this powerful vision that's meant to declare the absolute authority and the perfect justice of a king whose very identity is the Word of God, a king whose very word accomplishes the final judgment. The victory comes from who he is, not from military might.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If the Bible's ultimate picture of victory is one not with swords and armies, but with the pure, unstoppable force of truth and justice being spoken into existence, well, maybe the nature of true power is very, very different from how we usually imagine it.